Good afternoon and welcome to ChessFrog OmniVersity. I am your host, Marcus Brown, and we're going to start off things a little differently today. Put people inside of a good, decent mood, something contemplative, put you on a higher plane. We're going to do a poem. And the name of the poem is called Nomads. Dusk, we the unroyal awake, thriving, surviving on the darkness, the blood of night. Call us beggars, bag ladies, or bums, but we are people wanted by no one. Do you know our pain? The answer is no. Our pain only our kind know. As we walk through city streets, as we sleep under winter snow, our pain is our loneliness of having no place to go. Look at me, not the rags that I wear. Look at me, not my uncombed hair. Look, not in pity, don't stare, and ask yourself, do you care? We are human too. We are only less fortunate than you. Nomads wandering the city streets, not mad in wonderland pondering where to rest our feet, and no man's land pondering where will we go. We've been waiting here for many, many years, since the Mesopotamian dawn, when society first woke and yawned. But we'll wait, though, for a few more, till the sun is setting in the land of Armageddon, or maybe until next week, when the world belongs to the meek. But until then, I know we've got no place to go. Thank you. All right. Again, this is ChessFrog OmniVersity. Today's topic is education. What's going on with education right now, August 2024? We have a major election coming up, and we have some major changes that are coming to education. We also have kids going back to school. I say to you and all parents out there, this is a very important show for you to pay attention to, especially if you are raising children today. Our call in number is 248 820 5053. You can chime in on Facebook. This is Out of the Mud Incorporated, a media company providing this service to you, providing this show to you. All right, priority number one, you can have kids that have been out of school for 2 or 3 months right now, and they will be returning to school. There's something called summer rust. What is summer rust? That's when you learn how to write your name in cursive in fourth grade, but then when you get back to fifth grade, you've forgotten everything that you learned over the summer. It's important right now that you practice with your children and go over certain things so that they're ready for that first day of school. Whether it be they shouldn't be cussing or yelling in class, or they should be trying to aim for the stars with their activities and their behaviors. You need to have a talk with your kids to make sure that they're on track for what the school expects of them and for what you expect of them. Number two, big important thing. Right now, beginning of the school year, everybody has a letter grade A at the beginning of class. Guess whose job it is to maintain that letter A grade? It is you and your child's job. If you check with your child weekly, if you ask your teacher of your child to send a report weekly, you can get that done. Right now, we're in a situation where education comes under fire, where education isn't being provided in a fair and consistent manner across the United States, where education has also been accused of being a pipeline for the prison system. How do you keep your child out of the school to prison pipeline? You stay involved with your child's school life. I don't necessarily agree with the current state of public education. I don't agree with its funding. I don't agree with the disparities. You can go from one school and have the ultimate in technology and air conditioning, and go to another school where you have lead chips and asbestos falling from the ceiling, and the conditions in the classroom are too hot and sweltering to allow anyone to concentrate. That is not fair and equal public education. The term that might be appropriate there is free and appropriate public education. That's what's written into the law. Every child is guaranteed a free and appropriate public education. Michigan court says and interprets that to mean that don't mean the schools have to teach your child how to read. There was a case in Highland Park where children didn't learn how to read but were passed along. Someone filed suit, and the court said the schools are not guaranteeing you that your child will learn. The schools are not there to guarantee that your child will learn how to read. Schools serve a different purpose, especially in America. It would be great to think that schools are there to be the equalizer of the playing field, where everybody can start in school and achieve as much as they can and become very rich and powerful through their educational merits. That is not the real America. That's the America that's sold on the back of a school pamphlet. The reality of America is the rich are usually people that inherit wealth. There is a rare and slim few that are able to achieve wealth on their own. I would love it if this country was a meritocracy where people get what they earn and people that have not earned anything don't get anything. But that's not the truth. Most of the millionaires and billionaires in this country get it because somebody in their family line was brilliant. Not that they were brilliant. There are so many examples out there today of people who are famous. I'm not going to name the people who run the hotels, and I'm not going to name the people who have a ketchup named after them, and I'm not going to name the people whose father was part of the dream team lawyer for O.J. Simpson. But you got people that are famous and rich just because their parents or grandparents did something remarkable. This is America. Yes, you can make it and go places in America, but don't assume that everything you hear in America is true. Those multi-billionaires, most of them inherit their money. Very few of them earn their money or their bills. How can you, as a parent this year, start off brand new with your child and make sure that they can get a piece or a grip or a glimpse at being successful in education? Number one, don't rely on the educational system. They are there to teach them basic things and to make sure kids adhere to bells and adhere to factory systems. If you haven't noticed, prisons, schools, and factories look a lot alike. You have a building that has bells that tell people to move around. You have a building that assigns people to do certain things at certain times. If that doesn't sound like the same system being used by prisons, schools, and factories, I don't know what is. What can you do to make sure your child gets the most out of education? You can make sure that they are learning those basics that the schools are teaching them, but you can also expose your child to things outside that. I taught for over 25 years, and I know for a fact the most important thing about a child's education is the way that child feels about what they've learned, about how that child consumes what they learn, how they build confidence. Sometimes you can do things with a child, like take them on a field trip or take them someplace that makes them feel special or makes them feel different. I would say that those field trips and making that child feel special and different is more important than anything. One, two, three, that way. I would say that taking a child out on a field trip is more important than sitting inside the classroom with that child trying to do drills or rote learning. Sometimes a child going out to a farm, going out and experiencing the real world, being taught something out in the real world, makes them feel like they are special, makes them feel like they're acquiring something that no one else has. Once you build a child's self-esteem and make them feel like they can do and be anything they want to be, half the battle is over. You have these children out there that they want to call geniuses and brilliant. It's not so much that they are better or bred or genetically different from other children. The most important thing is that self confidence. that belief in self. You deal with some children that are almost arrogant with it. And you want your child to be arrogant. I'm special because. Every child should be able to make a statement about why they are special, how they are special, and what makes them. I'm special because I went to Egypt. I'm special because of who my family is. I'm special because I know how to fry an egg. You give children experiences and opportunities to feel special. Schools these days are starting to take that away. They've taken away spelling bees. They've taken away science fairs. They've taken away a lot of the opportunities that kids used to have. When I was in elementary school, believe it or not, schools were better. And I went to a Detroit public schools. We were required to be in a play. We were required to participate in the spelling bee. We were required to participate in the science fair. You better turn something in for that science fair or your grade is dropping dramatically. When was the last time you heard about a science fair or the chess club or equations or a lot of these other quote unquote extracurricular activities? Those extracurricular activities make kids feel special. Sports is important for a team building and for an esteem building thing, but we should give that opportunity to more than just the athletes to feel special and to be a star. We should give that opportunity to kids in middle school and elementary school to be a part of plays, to be a part of spelling bees, to be a part of science fairs. There are opportunities, and I'm not talking about giving a trophy to every kid. That's that's not wise or feasible. But every kid does have their own special gift or niche. Every person is a star. And to paraphrase Sly and the Family Stone, it's just about finding what makes them a star. A good teacher, a creative teacher, a smart administrator knows that there's got to be a way with the 180 days provided to them to make every child in that school feel special. Maybe allowing a kid to read a poem they wrote, maybe putting up a drawing they did on the bulletin board, maybe giving them an opportunity to show off some skill they got, whether it be in jump rope or in other things. We have to make our children feel special, and we also have to start stepping up our game as far as what the academics are. You have people out there, and part of the reason why our country is inside this milieu, where I think 75% of the voting populace doesn't really understand all the issues. And I think that 50% of them are just voting based on what a party is. I think if you broke down the issues to them about whether or not they support taxes for roads or taxes for schools or taxes for hospitals, if you broke those issues down, I think you find Democrats and Republicans all over the place on where they fall, and they might not fall within their party limits. Part of the problem with this country is we're not teaching critical thinking anymore. Critical thinking, creative thinking have gone by the wayside. What is critical thinking? Being able to look at a situation and determine for yourself what is best and what is right. We expect juries to do it, and we expect people to do it when they watch the news. But nowadays, you have different flavors of news. You have your conservative news show and your liberal news show. It's almost that you got to go outside this country and watch foreign news in order to get the true story about what's going on. Depending on what politics you follow, you are slamming one candidate or slamming another. And that's not what the news is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about propaganda or yellow journalism or trying to get your candidate voted or elected in. Again, we're talking about education, what you can do in order to help your child succeed. Our phone number is 248 820 5053. Please feel free to call in. Please feel free to chime in on Facebook. Out of the Mud Incorporated, a media company. Hit us up. Tell me what you think, or tell me what ideas or suggestions you have to keep kids on track. Might be a good idea to break that calendar out and say, hey, how are you doing this week? Every Friday. Make it a point to ask your child weekly how they doing. Are they struggling somewhere? Might be a good point to do a surprise visit at the beginning of the year while your child still has that A in order to make sure that you get face-to-face contact with the teacher, and that your child is being treated as more than a number. We talk about education, and I have an education background. We have to mention something else that's about to happen. Depending on how this election turns out, there is thoughts in about getting rid of the Department of Education. The Department of Education as a presidential cabinet level position began with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education in order to support students to make sure that things were getting spread around correctly. We had certain laws being passed about gender equity in sports, gender equity inside the schools and then colleges. Not the College of Education, but the Department of Education was created by Jimmy Carter to help facilitate some of that. Right now, there's a push saying that our government's too big, there's too many laws, we need to get rid of certain things. One of the things that Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation suggests is getting rid of the Department of Education. I'm concerned about this. What's going to replace it? Who's going to have oversight? Will it fall under human health or the Department of or Defense or what? Because another suggestion is that all schools be mandated to give military batteries like the ASVAB to students, and that their names be turned over to these recruiters at different levels. I don't have anything against the military. I love the military, but the military is not for everyone. And to have military recruiters in schools stalking kids when colleges technically can't do some of the stuff that recruiters can do is kind of scary. Uh, my personal experience going into the military and with other people going into the military is interesting. Some of the stories and promises that get made that don't get fulfilled. So we have education in America. We have the proposition to get rid of the Department of Education. What should replace it, and why are we doing this? If we're getting rid of the Department of Education just because there's too many laws, this, that, and the other thing, I think that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Does the Department of Education need to be changed? Yes. The Department of Education has not been able to successfully desegregate our schools. Yes, people, schools are still segregated even after Brown versus Board of Education. Schools are still segregated. Scary thing is, I'll be 55 tomorrow, child of 69, and as a child of 69, I experienced more segregation than my parents did. My parents went to school with white kids in elementary and middle school. When I went to school in Detroit, there were no white kids, no Latinos, no Arabic, no anything else except for black kids here, black kids there. Might see a white teacher here and there or a white administrator, but other than that, the school was straight up black in Detroit. And it's kind of scary and weird that my parents, who are also born in Detroit, would have the experience of going to schools right at the birth of desegregation, but yet and still, me being born at the birth of white flight would not have that same experiences. Schools are not balanced, schools are not fair, but I tell you something, the most important component, the most important part of a child's education is number one, that child, and number two, the atmosphere that child grows up in, i.e., the parents' input. Ask yourself, how many books do you have in your house? Some people would say that the number of books you have in the house might be an indicator of how successful your child is going to be. If you know that all you got in your house is an old Dr. Seuss book that's been drawn in and ripped up, then maybe you need to get some more books. Maybe at least once a year, we go out and buy new books for the kids. When I grew up, we had an encyclopedia set, we had a dictionary, and we had a few other books. But we also had a whole collection of Donald Goins. And if anybody knows who Donald Goins is, he's basically Iceberg Slim from Detroit. And these are probably not the best book for young men to be reading. As an African American man, I say that one of the most important books that our children should read and be able to discuss with their parents is either the autobiography of Malcolm X The Invisible Man, not the sci-fi, but the Ralph Ellison version, or be able to watch Roots with your child. There is an education out there that we must provide to our children. We are black folks. We know what it is to be black. We know what it is to first experience that first time being called the N word. Your child may have experienced it or may not have experienced it in the same way or in a racial context, but it's our child, it's our job, it's our duty to make our children ready for this world they live in. I'm not saying that they should be expecting a handout or expecting help for this, that, and other thing, but if we don't prepare our children for certain things they will face, then we're doing damage to our children. Just like we want to tell our daughters how to deal with gender inequity, we want to tell our sons and our daughters how to deal with racial inequity. We have a world now that's filled with Karens. We have a world now where video and cameras are everywhere and things are being exposed. You have the not me movement. You have this, that, and other thing. Something that scares me. The stuff I did as a kid was hilarious, but it was also embarrassing and it was also scary. The things I did as a kid, I would not want videotape to pop up of right now. Our children live in a world where video is everywhere. Breaking a window, oh, we got it on video. You say you wasn't with that girl, we got it on video. You say you didn't punch that man, we got it on video. The world has changed because of technology. You can't just when you express your opinion, and everyone has the First Amendment freedom of speech, but you have to be careful what you say because if you make a slanderous statement, you say Billy Bob Joe or whatever is such and such, you can be sued for slander nowadays. If you make a statement about certain people in a certain way, you can be called a sexist or a racist or a homophobe or a transphobe. And there's so many other names out there that people are coming up with. We need to be preparing our kids with a proper education that goes beyond just the 3 R's reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm looking for callers out there 248 820 5053, or you can chime in on Out of the Mud Incorporated, a media company, and tell me what you think about what could be done or should be done with education. Because the education that's being provided to our children is not necessarily for their benefit, but might be for society's benefit to teach them how to live inside of a factory or to teach them how to live inside of a prison. How do you feel about that school to prison pipeline that we got out there, where you actually have places and people making decisions about how many prisons to build based on fourth grade reading scores? That's really scary that nobody's doing anything about it. But when you look again and see that factories, prisons, and schools look a lot alike, then you start saying, well, maybe there's something else going on here. Most important thing we can give our children is a good education. And that good education doesn't always come from a school. Sometimes it's about teaching them critical thinking at home and creative thinking at home, teaching them how to read between the lines and to think outside the box. And if any other skill could be important in the world coming tomorrow, it's not necessarily getting a college education. It's not necessarily getting training inside of a trade. It's not necessarily being an entrepreneur. It's more important to be a good person who's well grounded, who can make a fair and balanced decision about things that are coming towards them and in their world. We don't always have to prioritize money. Sometimes we have to prioritize living. Is it better to have a whole bunch of money and a terrible life, or to live a good, balanced life and have to do some labor? You have to start prioritizing and putting your values into your children, and don't get confused or twisted when your children come back to you with the wrong values. You can't always blame the schools or the neighborhood because the number one teacher, that first teacher, is the family. Inside the house, they put in the priorities and they are the ones who create a situation where a child's mind says, I'm going to appreciate education and try and learn as much as possible. When we look at the way we eat as adults, it's based on the way we ate as children. The foods we like is based on that. There's so much that we can do for our children as far as trying to create a situation where they appreciate education or are able to discern between good education and rhetoric. Because there's some stuff they teach in school that's just straight up garbage. I don't know if people remember the DARE program, but the DARE program almost had kids trying to snitch out their parents for smoking weed. My mom smokes that, officer. You want to come arrest her? You had different things going on at these schools. So I'm not saying that schools are all that or the holy holy of like a church. And sometimes churches aren't even that. We need to make sure that we're providing our children with not just their academic education, but their number one spiritual education. Because sometimes the preacher man can be a little bit off also. We got to make sure that our kids are getting grounded spiritually, socially, mentally for a world that's coming towards them. And what scares me, these kids got new competition. AI is about to start taking a lot of jobs that were meant for these kids. We don't need you to draw that anymore for us, sir. We don't need you to sing for us anymore, ma'am. We have AI that can do that. So a lot of jobs in the future, just like 30 years ago, people were scared of robots. Now we're scared of AI. Looking for comments, looking for chime in, 248-820-5053. Out of the Mud Incorporated, a media company. Rich Jones, how you doing there? What's on your mind, Rich Jones? And what up to you also? We're looking for comments. Chime in. I'll give you a shout out. Education is our topic. What can I do to help my child succeed? When that Fred YBC sent me a link. I had to check that out later, Fred. Tell me what the link's about. We're looking for comment and discussion of education. What can we do to help protect our children? Bethany Hazard, thank you very much. Bethany, do you have any children? Are there any concerns you have? I was an educator for over 25 years. I taught at schools where we had fifth graders learning trigonometry, where we had the whole school learning 4 different languages. I've taught in places and seen success, and I've also seen the ugly part of education where politics gets involved and the focus gets taken off the kids and more on the school's name or the district's name as opposed to making sure that children succeed. We have to start demanding from our superintendent, from our teachers, our principals, our school board members, something different. If we know our school is failing and that our children aren't able to read, we need to demand something different. I don't remember learning how to read because I was part of a Head Start program. Say what? We got a call coming in? Caller, what's your name? We have a call coming in. We're working on the tech right there. Caller, I need you to speak up when you get a chance. But like I said, I don't remember learning how to read because I was in preschool when I learned how to read. Head Start program. I hear a chime there, but I don't hear a voice from the caller. Call back, caller. Call back. We'd appreciate it if you call us back, and we'll talk to you. But I don't remember learning how to read because we did it in Head Start. You start your kids right now. Something real simple and easy to do. Oh, we got a phone call coming in. While that phone call is being taken in, check call one. From
Rich Jones.
Rich Jones, how you doing there? Hello, Rich Jones, are you there with us? Can y'all hear him? I cannot hear him. Rich Jones? Check one. Rich Jones, check two. Well, we're not hearing Rich Jones right now. We're working on our tech right here. Please, Rich Jones, stay online with us. We're going to make sure that we get your call in, and we want to have a discussion with you. DJ,
Should
please.
be on the line.
Pick up your phone up from the request line.
Testing.
Mic check. Rich, are you still there?
Uh, Everything's on.
Well,
Let's
we're
see.
still working on our tech. We apologize. Rich, try to hit us back up. Help Rich, help us solve our tech problem here. Call us back and we'll have our producer extraordinaire, Mr. Grundy, walk you through what we need to do in order to get you online. All right, back to talking about education. There are certain things we can do in order to help our children out. Putting a priority on education, asking your kids to read numbers for you at the grocery store or read packages for you at the grocery store, doing simple things. If your kids gonna watch TV, turn the closed captioning on. Why would I turn the closed captioning on?
So Bethany Hazard said, "No children anymore. Bring back parent involvement."
Bringing back parent involvement. We got a phone call coming in.
Keep talking.
We had a school once.
Call
Imagine
from
this.
Rich Jones.
Rich Jones, we're gonna
to
try and get you
accept,
in.
press 1. To
Press
send a
1. Are you there, Rich?
Jones.
Rich
Can't hear.
Jones, are you there? Well, I'm gonna tell you what we did in
We
order to
heard
bring back
everything,
parent
yeah.
involvement. Instead of the kids getting suspended, what if we made the parent come in for a full day and follow their kid around from class to class to class? Now, of course, their child is going to behave like an angel, but that parent will get an idea of what's going on and the mood and the zeitgeist of a school. It'll help them understand how they need to redirect their own children inside the class because nobody's going to throw paper at the teacher with their mom sitting there. But when you see your son's best friend do that, you get an idea of what your son is doing. When you see your daughter talking about such and such, or you see her friends talking about inappropriate things, you get an idea of what your child is doing. Instead of putting kids out, let's make parents come in. If a
I
child
think
gets
I hear you, Rich. I don't know what happened, but I heard him click off. Couldn't hear him talking, but I heard. We hear the ring. You heard the ring, right?
I heard the ring.
So if we
Why
hear the
don't we
ring, we
have
can hear.
our plus one, Miss M over there, call us and test out the sound system by calling 248-820-5053, and we'll get our sound corrected with our new intern here who doesn't want to be introduced yet. But maybe we can even get her to start our own show. But back to education. Education takes many forms, and it can be done in different ways. A lot of the things we do goes beyond common sense. We suspend kids when they're having difficulty, or we hold them back a grade, which creates a lot of self-esteem issues. We can be doing things so differently. And one of the ways we got a call coming in, and we're going to
call
check
from.
in. So what we could do is, like I said, is bring parents in. If the parent can't come in, get the aunt,
Oh.
the uncle, the older cousin, somebody. Test one, check one. Who do I have online with me right now?
Hi, this is the intern, Malia Lewis. I was wondering, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Malia. If you want to call in, we have our sound working correctly. Rich Jones, give us a call back. Our intern extraordinaire, Miss M, has solved the problem. 248-820-5053. We're talking about education today. What can we do in order to help our children? There's a lot of money in education, but it's not going to the teachers. There's a lot of money in education, but we still have schools that are falling apart. Where is that money going? Textbooks cost $90 each. Now, when I go and get me a Stephen King book, or if I go and get me a book written by Macmillan or whoever's big right now, those books generally cost under $30 for the hardcover. But a textbook will cost you almost $100. Who's making the money off education? Who is making that money off education? It's generally the publishers making money off education. It's the politicians making money off education because it sure enough isn't going to the schools. It's going to suburban schools, but not to the urban schools. The way that money gets divided up needs to be discussed differently because driving by a suburban school that has state of the art computers and high tech and a lot of other things going on versus driving by an inner city school that's over 60 years old and has paint falling off the ceilings and has infrastructure problems and needs new roofs and so forth. You can see that there is definitely a disparity, knowing that schools are still segregated, where 90% of kids will wind up going into a school where they will never see certain people or have classes with certain people. Doesn't sound very American. But in order to change this, we need to have a discussion about what really needs to change. We have a comment coming in, and what's this comment say? Bethany says that children that learn how to read are read too. I would generally say that reading to children is important, and having children practice their reading is also important in real life situations. The first thing that I recognize, I'm not going to lie, I recognize that that big, giant golden M stood for McDonald's. And most kids can tell you they see that golden M, that's McDonald's. Are they reading? They are transcribing a symbol that is reading. But we need to start putting it into practice more often. If you take your child to the store, you can ask your child to grab the sugar. And if they can't tell the word sugar from flour, you tell them the first letter and start having them distinguish things. Kids will pick up on things that are in their world that they want to learn. There is a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Kozel. Jonathan Kozel wrote a few books back in the 80s and 90s talking about the disparities in American schools. How some kids, even in these terrible schools that are falling apart, still succeed. And it goes back to that old concept of sometimes we had to be twice as good, three times as good, 10 times as good as those kids of privilege in order to achieve and go somewhere. When we start talking about going to college and whatnot, I was on Facebook today and somebody had posted a picture of a denial letter. They were denied the right to go to college because they were Negro. At this time, we regret to inform you that since you are a Negro, we cannot consider you for matriculation at our institute. That was just 50 years ago that schools were still sending those letters out if they found out that someone was the wrong color, quote unquote, not the wrong color, but a person of a different ethnicity. We live in a world today where college does not necessarily determine where you're going to land. You have college graduates that are working at McDonald's. You have college graduates that can't find jobs in the field that they want. Trade schools seem to be more of an option at this time. Learning to become a plumber, an electrician, getting a trade that is definitely going to be needed in construction, whether it be bricklaying or learning how to plaster a wall or paint. That might get you more money than a college education these days. My brother and I have a brother that was born in 68. I was born in 69. My brother and I had the same basic upbringing in Detroit. We both went to the Marine Corps. He studied electricity and went to Voc Tech in high school. I went to a college prep high school. I go to college for 4 years. He spends 4 years learning more about electricity and becoming an electrician. My brother winds up at the height of his pay. I don't want to talk too much about his business, but he's making well over $100,000, close to $200,000 to $300,000 with overtime, being an electrician. Where I, on the other hand, as a regular teacher, never made over $100,000 with my base salary. In order to get over $100,000, I had to do some writing, had to do some other stuff on the side in order to boost my play, whether it be tutoring or consulting or doing other things on the side. In order to get my base pay up, it took a lot of effort beyond just your traditional overtime. Today's world, Look at it realistically. Don't rely on what your parents told you about. You better get your education. You better go to college if you want to make some money. The world doesn't work like that. Yes, you need an education, but that education should be something that's thought out. What's important to you? What's a priority for you? Going into a trade might be the right thing to do. Becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business might be the right thing for you. Going to college might be the right thing for you. Going into the military might be the right thing for you. Because if you don't make a plan right now, somebody else will make a plan for you. And that's already been proven with that pipeline that's going from schools straight into prison. You wind up on these streets at the age of 18 with no job, no job prospects, no skills. Somebody will find a place for you to go. And it might not be the place you want to go. Those who fail to plan to fail. And on that note, I'm going to ask that we call in again at 248-820-5053. On that note, I want to thank again Out of the Mud Incorporated, a media company, for allowing me to speak on certain issues. On that note, I ask people to be cognizant. I ask them to be aware of what's coming up for education. If they get rid of the Department of Education, a lot of the money that got funneled through the Department of Education is going to be going into somebody's pocket. It doesn't sit well with me that they want to get rid of it, but don't have a stable or great plan of how to replace it. It doesn't sit well with me that we have people that have not been trained in education, psychology, or any human nature field.
Call from
Coming in.
Rich Jones.
Rich Jones, do we have you on the mic? You there, sir? You got to talk to your telephone, Mike. Rich Jones, where you be? I appreciate your patience with us, but we're not hearing you, Rich. We just had our intern call in, and it worked for us. But we're not hearing you right now, so I'm not sure if you got your phone on a mic or if you got it on speaker or if you turned it. You might have to adjust your mute button or whatever. I'm starting to hear something. I heard something there for a second. Well, let me get back on my tirade while we figure out what's going on. Rich Jones, you want to see if you can pick him up or call him back on your phone, Mr. Grundy? Try and see if we can hit him back and see if we can pick up the call that way. But there's a lot of things going on. Children today face problems and issues that we could have never considered. The whole concept of videotape or things being recorded in class. That's good on one level because you don't have to miss class if every class was recorded. But it's bad on another level because those little mistakes you make get held over for 1,000 years. Imagine splitting your pants in third grade. Everybody's had a clothing failure at some point in time in school, whether it be you're wearing too big of pants or your shoes fell apart. I remember one time my shoes were talking like dogs, and it was hilarious to look at from a distance. But it was an embarrassing moment, and I'm glad it didn't get recorded. Children today, it gets recorded. Their embarrassing moments, being threatened, being bullied, dealing with a whole bunch of other things that we never even considered dealing with when we were growing up. The stuff that we did as little rascals or the stuff we watched on the Three Stooges doesn't always translate into the modern world. I was trying to explain to my kids how cartoons used to be racist and used to have mammies in them, or they'd have people in blackface singing stuff. You had Bugs Bunny do blackface at one time. You had other characters make other racial comments or commentaries, and it was just natural for that to happen. The way we dealt with that is the way that these kids are dealing with new things that are affecting their environment and their world or distracting them. We need to put a change in things. I agree. Department of Education is not working the way it should, but it was not originally designed to do the things most people think it should. Common school education was originally created to assimilate the growing number of immigrants that were coming in during the 1800s. Do we want these people to follow the president, or do we want these people to follow the Pope? Part of the reason why we have a Catholic school system was kickback to the assimilation and acculturation that was going on in public schools. We're going to bring these kids in. We're going to make sure they speak English. We're going to teach them how to read English, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have them say the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to have them understand what our government is. Some of that actually is altruistic to understand how our government works. Some of it's altruistic if we're giving literacy to parties or groups of people that previously didn't have literacy. But some of it's kind of dirty if we think about taking away people's culture or forcing them to make a choice about which culture is more important. If you saw what happened, or if you read about what happened to Native Americans, literally having their children taken away from them so they can be acculturated, so they can learn to speak English, so they can figure out their own languages, it's really sad and sickening. If you know about anything about African American history, where there were actually laws that denied us the right to learn, where fingers or toes or eyes could be put out if you had been found to be reading or learning how to read, where you could actually be killed for knowing how to read. Education is still a dangerous topic in this country. Some people make sure their children get a great education and they either pay for it or they find some other ways of getting it funded. There are schools doing their job, and then there are other schools that are struggling with great educators but are struggling. Because how can you teach the internet or teach video production or teach any of these tech jobs if you don't have the technology in your school, if the internet's not working? There's a lot of disparity out there, and there are a lot of great teachers who are working beyond that disparity. Bethany Hazard, born in the 50s, nationalism was taught. Back in the days of before desegregation, you had a black school system in this country that was populated mostly by black teachers, and sometimes you'd have a white administrator overseeing that educational process to make sure we weren't going too far. But these teachers lived in our community. You saw them at the grocery store. They lived around the corner. Remember, this is back before white flight. This is back when this country still had ethnic enclaves in the city where most black people lived on this part, most Jewish people lived in this part, most Polish people lived in that part. You had a Greek town, Chinatown, etc. People were separate and went to the same schools, and their teachers reflected that. So nationalism, whether you want to call it nationalism, black pride, or if you want to call it just true education. We had a different educational system that relied on a different set of funding and a different set of principles. White teachers and black teachers were not paid the same amount of money. White schools and black schools were not funded the same way, but we still had black graduates who made themselves stand out amongst their peers. And that's what I'm saying needs to happen right now. If your child goes to an urban school, if your child goes to an underfunded school, it's your job to make sure that they have a ritual or a practice of going to the library on their own time, a ritual or practice of being able to do research. We had encyclopedias as kids if we were fortunate. People from all over the block shared those encyclopedias. Like, I need to do a book report. The Browns got an encyclopedia. Let me go and borrow their encyclopedia. Now that we have the internet, there are different things going on. If we got a good internet with the right amount of broadband. Marcus Brown, ChessFrog OmniVersity, 248-820-5053. We're working on making sure we can get our calls in. Make sure you have your phone turned on, the volume turned up, the mic is working like a traditional phone call when you call in, and we will make sure that we try and get you in. This is Out of the Mud Incorporated Productions. We have George Grundy as our producer. We have a as yet unnamed intern who is not interested in getting fame yet, but we're interested in hearing from you. And I'm interested in trying to tell you how to help best prepare your child. If you're not asking your child at least once a week how a class went, how school went, what's going on, then I have to ask, are you really interested in what your children are doing? Are you really interested in figuring out or helping them succeed? I need a producer to hit the phone for me. I don't have anybody working the phone line. I don't want to leave the mic, but we're going to try and see if we can get this phone answered real quick. Moving towards the phone right now. Shaking the tree ball. Oh, we lost the call. Moving too slow. Moving too slow. We lost the call. Sorry about that, caller. Yeah, I know we can do better than this, but we're doing it the best we can. So, education is not just for breakfast anymore. Please call back, caller. We got staff working the phone now. It's not anybody else's job but yours to make sure that your child has a good life. Having a good, proper education might be part of that life, preparing them in certain ways. We got a call coming in, 248-820-5053.
Call from
Rich Jones.
Mr. Jones, do we have you there today? We have a connection issue with that phone. Why don't we put a mic up to the phone and see if that'll work? His phone is not connected? Oh, I just heard him. I just heard you, Rich. I just heard you. I just heard you before you hung up, Rich. I don't know if you're not speaking through the phone or if you're trying to use some technology, or maybe you use one of them second class phones. You got some MCI Sprint stuff going on there, or you trying to use a pager on me? Anyway, we got a lot of educational issues as African Americans, as Latinx Americans. I appreciate it, Rich Jones. I appreciate it, Bethany. We need to get this word out. And if you can share this with some other parents out there, because I've been in situations where I've seen my cousins or my brother or some other people do things that were interesting and provocative. Kids come home from school, go put up them school clothes and go put on your play clothes. But they're not asking about homework. You never see your kid crack a book when they get home, but it's the school's fault that your kids aren't learning. Some of the stuff that the schools are teaching is bull. Some of us need to attend more school board meetings. Bethany, can you call in and see if your phone does the same thing for us? We ask you to call in, Bethany, to 248-820-5053. We're going to see if this is an isolated situation with one phone or if it's going on with other phones too. Matter of fact, here, take my phone. There's no lock on it. See if you can call in from my phone. It's our responsibility as parents, as cousins, as relatives, as whatever we are to children to make sure that the education they get is good. Do you actually and really expect the same people who deny reparations, the same people that deny uh, that racism even occurs today, the same people that deny whether or not there's police brutality to provide a proper education for your children? We need to be providing education to our children. That's
Call from Village Summit. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
well, we heard that part.
We heard that part.
Can you say
Can
something?
you say something?
This is Buddy Jim.
How you doing,
How
Buddy
you
Jim?
doing, Buddy Jim?
I want to talk about the education.
What kind of education you got there, Buddy Jim?
I want to know what kind of education is going on with Rich Jones' phone.
I don't know. Rich Jones has one of them CIA phones.
Okay.
But my phone works on this.
Call from
This is Buddy Jim.
Who we got coming in on 9? We got 248-820-5053. Out of the Mud Incorporated. All right. We thought we had a call coming in, but we're gonna table this, and I'm hoping that we get some comments or suggestions or ideas. I made one suggestion: easiest, laziest thing you can do. If your children are watching TV, turn on the closed captioning so they can start seeing those words along with hearing those words. Easy, lazy suggestion. Yeah, we don't want to rated R, but you know what? Kids learn how to spell cuss words too. If your kids, if you want to encourage your kids to read, buy some comic books. You can buy a gross of old comic books for less than $10. Go to the comic book man and say, "Hey, just give me a whole handful of comic books." Start passing them out. Comic books are dirt cheap. You can get kids to read. Parent Teacher Association. What happened to the Parent Teacher Association? What happened to the school board?
Call from
Bethany.
Hello, Bethany. How you doing today? Parent Teacher Association. What happened to the Parent Teacher Association? Hello, Bethany. What happened to the school board?
Call from Bethany.
Hello, Bethany. How you doing today?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Bethany. Can you hear me? What happened to the Parent Teacher Association? Turn your phone
Can you hear me?
Turn your computer down a little bit, Bethany.
Hello?
Yes, Bethany. Turn your computer down.
Hello?
Your volume on your computer is too high. Turn your volume down on your computer. We're getting feedback. Can you hear me, Bethany?
Hello?
Turn your volume down on your computer, Bethany. We still hear your computer running. Hit the mute button on your computer. Testing 1, 2. Well, we lost that one. If you call in, you have to turn your computer down so we don't get that feedback or that echo rebound. It appears that we're on a 7-second delay also, which might be causing some of our issues if there is a 7-second delay. But simple things the laziest parent can do to give their child an advantage. Closed captioning is one. When you take your child to the store, have them go pick out the sugar from the flour or read the label or read the measurement on the bag. That gives them practice with numbers. Have them make sure that they give the cashier the money and give them experience with the money. They're not teaching certain things in school anymore, whether it be cursive writing, whether it be how to read a analog clock. You got guys out there with $5,000 watches and they can't read them. They can't tell time unless it's digital. You got people out there that can't read the back of a package to tell you whether they're the nutritional information on a package to find out what's good or what's bad for them. This is not coincidental. This is not sheer laziness. Some of this is planned, people. If you don't want your child to be a sheep or a lamb in the future, if you want your child to be a leader, you need to teach them how to think outside the box and read between lines. If they go along with all the stuff that everybody else is going along with, if they don't question authority, then they will wind up being the lambs and the slaves and the sheeple of the future, slowly going to sleep while they're being taken advantage of. And there are people out there who will take advantage and grab them by the yoo-hoo, as he said. So you don't want that to happen to your child. All right. I'm going to try and take one more call, 248-820-5053, Out of the Mud Incorporated. Looking for comments on Facebook. I want to thank you. Thank Out of the Mud. Thank Mr. Grundy. Thank our fabulous new intern here, unnamed, anonymous, the person formerly known as intern. I want to thank everybody for listening today. I want you to take some of my advice. I want you to, most of all, think about the education your child is getting. Have your child think about the education your child is getting. try and ask your child at least once a week something they did in school. The most important thing in a child's education is their personal self-esteem and how they feel about their education. Thank you, Bethany, for calling in. We'll get our sound issues worked out in the near future. Try and share this show. I think there's some important things and some important ideals in there, and I think all parents should be trying to work on not just trusting the educational system anymore. We talked about a little bit about racism, and we talked a little bit about how education was done under Jim Crow and before desegregation. We got the same thing going. We got underfunded schools for black kids and well-funded schools for most white kids. Yes, there are some white kids getting underfunded too, but the kids that people care about, those affluent people, they getting what they need. And when we think about education, it's not just about that building structure or what condition it is in, because we had many successful George Washington Carvers. We had Dr. Charles Drew. We had all these other writers and everything else that was produced under that system. Langston Hughes. Education is not just about that school building. Education is also about how you feel about it and what you put into it. Remember, Dream Deferred. You want me to read Dream Deferred? Well, you could have let me pull it up first, sir. Well, I'm from a different generation. Maggot brain is part of my DNA. Maggot brain is part of the DNA. So I'd like to read a poem here. My producer suggested that I read it. I thought about it before, but I went with something original. And it's called Dream Deferred. The word deferred, for those who may not know, means something that's pushed back or given less of a priority. When the Supreme Court decided that schools would be desegregated, they used a provocative statement: with all deliberate speed. Now, you might think deliberate speed means hurry up and get this done, but really to deliberate means to take time to think about how it's done. I was very deliberate in the way that I did something. If I'm very deliberate, I'm taking my time and thinking about it. They're being very deliberate about desegregating schools because schools are still not desegregated. Ergo, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or does it crust over like something sweet? Or does it explode? That's our show for today, people. We'll get better. Thank you, Mr. Grundy. Thank you, Miss M Hazard, multiple hazards, and thank you everyone out there for listening today. We plan to get better. We plan to get smarter. But remember, it's your job to make sure your child receives the education that you want them to receive. Don't let them just fill your child's head with different types of mess that you don't agree with or understand. We were able to do this before. We can do it again. We need to not be lazy. Ask your child once a week something they did in school. Right now, they start off the school year with an A. Let's keep that A and maintain that A. Be on the lookout next year for when they start talking about canceling the Department of Education. Love, peace, and hair grease. ChessFrog OmniVersity.